Alright guys, well I'm here for my afternoon nap, so thanks for coming along. Actually, I want to show you, take you through a few simple exercises. Now, I know those of you who have been training for a while, you might look at these activities I'm going to take you through and really dismiss them as not being all that important. But you know, it's what I found over the years, and this is again over 20 years of training, that sometimes we need to go back to basics. And quite often, a lot of the reoccurring injuries and these irritating things that keep happening to us as we continue to train and set new personal best, or compete or cycle further. It just, a lot of these silly things keep showing up. And I really believe, I honestly believe, and I've seen evidence of the course in my practice over the years, that if we get back to some fundamental things, we can start recreating beautiful new patterns inside the body. So remember the whole acronym SAM that I talked about in the previous video, that we talked about stabilization. And stabilization is just that. So when we think about the pelvic floor, we're going to stabilize the pelvic floor. We're going to do that before we do anything else. And a simple way to practice that is by doing something called pelvic tilts. So pelvic tilt, of course, normally you would think about doing this activity by simply pressing the lower back into the bench or to the floor, and that, of course, would in turn tilt our pelvis. What I'm more interested in is that not so much can you do the number of repetitions called let's say the number of repetitions for a pelvic tilt, but can you fire the muscles that tilt the pelvis? And this is really the big distinction in training and how we start playing around with some of these more controlled movements. Is can we actively fire off muscles in a sequence to make the movement occur? I can do a pelvic tilt probably numerous different ways, but I really only do it one right way. So let's think about it. So when we talked about tightening the pelvic floor, we were really just speaking about the bladder and rectal muscles. Now if I tighten the muscles of the bladder, of course the TVA tends to tighten across the expanse of the lower belly here. And if I think about tightening the belly to that position here, tightening the bladder muscles and really compressing them, the musculature of the pubic arch is going to rotate my pelvis, it's going to pull my pelvis a little bit forward. Does that make sense? Right? So if I tighten through here, the musculature is going to contract and pull and rotate my pelvis a little bit forward, which in turn rotates and pushes my lower back towards the bench. Right? So I'm not actually just arbitrarily shoving my back against the bench. I'm actually contracting the muscles that are going to give me that bit of an anti-version of rotation forward. So I'm tighten that lower belly, right? Tighten the pelvic floor, which in turn tighten the lower belly, and then I'm going to pull through on it, and it's going to give me that little bit of a rotation, and now I feel my lower back planed against the bench. Now the second part to that, of course, is the rectal muscles. Now if I tighten my rectal muscles, they're going to in turn activate my glute max, right? Because they're proximate, right? Both glute max muscles are proximate to my rectal muscles. So tighten my pelvic floor, it's going to pull. Tighten my rectal muscles, it's going to push. And what I get is a really strong rotation of my pelvis. Right, you with me? Now, I know it sounds perhaps kind of fundamental, a little bit too basic to be of use to you, but I assure you, if you stick with this process, you'll find some pretty dramatic results. So for the interim, what I want you to do is practice this movement. And again, as I mentioned before, we're going to do this in the morning, we're going to do this in the evening. It only takes a few minutes each day to get it done. But we're not actually so much training the muscles as we are training the brain, training the process of movement. So the pelvic tilt, we're going to pull up to the pelvic floor, and as we do, we're getting that little bit of rotation in the pelvis, which happens as a side effect of us tightening our pelvic floor, right? Bladder muscles, rectal muscles contracting up and inward. And so if we did that 10 to 12 times, right, actively 10 to 12 times, and one more distinction when you're doing this is make sure not to tighten anything else, right? Don't tighten your jawline, right? Make sure your neck and shoulders are not active. Everything else is quite relaxed. Just really divorce all of the body parts from this activity and get into that slight rotation. Right? We really want to start teaching the body what we want it to do. Okay? So let's say we've done 2 sets of 12 to 15 repetitions, and now we kind of know what our pelvic floor is all about. Now, how are we going to teach our extremities how to operate to our pelvic floor? Well, quite simply, we're going to first SAM, stabilize, pelvic floor braced. Now, for the second part here, I'm going to work on my lower extremities. Now, with my left leg here, I'm going to bring my left foot off the bench by 6 to 8 inches, maybe at the very most. But my focal point is trying to draw to my pelvic floor to lift from here. And then the descent from my leg back down to the floor, my foot back down to the bench, I'm going to really keep my lower back pressed and braced all the way down. So I'm contracting from here to help bring it up. I'm also contracting from here to help control the descent. So no matter where my leg is in the movement, of course, my core is active. And more importantly, my brain is aware that this is involved in the movement of my left leg up and down. Now certainly I can lift my left leg up and down without too much focus here, but what you'll find is that when you turn this off and you lift the left leg independently, the stress tends to move a little bit to the outside, away from the core, and the sound of the leg is much heavier, as you can hear, right? The leg will drop a bit heavier. If you run on a treadmill, we've heard people run on the treadmill, suddenly they're going to put the foot right to the belt. That's what's happening, right? The energy is going through the body this way, but my core being active first, the energy is coming this way, right? Brace through, nice and strong, control up, control down, control up, control down. Thighs are relaxed, foot is relaxed. I'm not pointing my toe and activating my shins, right? My tibialis. This is all relaxed all the way through. The focal point is allowing the core to mitigate and control the entire activity. Same thing on the right side here. Pelvic floor braced, bladder and rectum muscles contracted, lower back is stable against the bench. Lift the leg, lift the foot about 6 to 8 inches off the floor, off the bench, and do that again 10 to 12 times on the right side. Right, so you can do 2 sets to the left, 2 sets for the right, and again, the focal point is really trying to get the brain to pay attention to what you're doing, because they're doing this kind of in a bit of a sequence, and then again, the brain loves a pattern. So think about what you're doing, think about the core bracing, try to make sure that all the other muscles that want to get involved are relaxed, facial muscles included, and now we can go up to the upper body. So you can use anywhere from a 3 to 8 pound weight, depending on your strength. And again, when we're doing these activities, we're not here because we're injured, we're here because we're healthy. We just need to get to that next point. So if you have injuries that you're dealing with, make sure you're dealing with the physio who's actually walking through this process properly. Now, I have the weight in my right hand here. Now I'm going to imagine that from the end of this dumbbell to the base of my pubic bone is a bit of a guide wire. So again, I want my core to control what's happening here. So shoulders are back and down, my core is active, right? So I've tightened my pelvic floor. Now I'm going to focus on bracing from here, and I'm going to make sure my lower back stays stable all the way through, and my focus is here, not here, funny enough. My focus is here. Even though the weight's in my hand, my focus is in my core. Now, from this position here, I'm going to think about drawing an invisible line, a guide wire from my core to help use that to help bring my arm back up to the top, right? So again, it's the vertical position, control here, right, and the control, invisible guide wire from the pubic bone right to the dumbbell edge here, control all the way through, control, again, not tightening my jawline, not tightening my feet, maintaining a lot of strengthening, focus and control here, and brace it all the way up and through. Right. Now when you shut the core off, what you're going to find is when the arm goes back, it's going to drop back very rapidly. And it's actually quite astounding, and it's just something I never would have suspected unless I started doing it myself. So what you do for one side, of course, please you in turn do for the other. Brace the pelvic floor, so again the lower back is secure against the bench. Imagine the guide wire from the end of the dumbbell to the base of the pubic bone. Make sure the shoulders are back and down so you don't have the elevated shoulder. And again, control, focusing the control from here all the way through as you go through, and then use that core muscle to bring it all the way back, again, without tightening your jawline. Okay, so we have the pelvic floor initial contraction and the pelvic tilt. We have the pelvic tilt contraction with the heel lift. We have the pelvic tilt contraction, which is static now at this point, with the overhead arm extensions. And now one more activity we're going to do is a bridge. Now, of course, the bridging exercise is for our buttock muscles. Now, you think, well, buttock muscles, again, how hard could a bridging exercise be? Well, the challenge with a lot of bridging activities is that the visual part of a bridging movement actually looks to be quite vertical, right? Meaning I'm simply going to bring my hips from the bench, I'm going to elevate them vertically and then take them down, and voila, there we have a glute exercise. Well, that's not exactly how it works, because your buttock muscles are attached to the hip joint, and the hip joint is a ball and socket joint. So I'm going to ask you, can a ball and socket joint produce a straight line? No, actually a ball and socket joint can only move in arc patterns. So is there an arc pattern to this exercise, or does it look simply vertical? Well, it appears vertical, and the problem is that when you're observing an exercise, and your observation, your perception of the movement is what the body tries to mimic. So everybody doing a vertical type exercise in a bridging movement, because you think it's vertical, your lower back and hamstrings tend to be quite a bit more active because the brain's trying to figure out how to accommodate that vertical exercise. But what if we told you the movement was actually more a bit of an arc pattern? Well, think about the shape of the glutes. We wanted glutes to be more in a rounded type musculature form, so we have to think round. So again, following the SAM acronym, shoulders back and down, pelvic floor is braced, my core muscles are active. Now I'm going to activate my glutes, so I'm going to push up my heels, keep my feet relaxed. Now how do I activate my glutes? Well, by squeezing them together. Now my glutes are actually going to squeeze together and in towards the tailbone, so when I push down to the heels and I squeeze in, and I squeeze in, and I squeeze in, what I end up getting is that my glutes are coming together and they end up pushing my pelvis forward. So you with me here? So on the way down, of course, I'm going to maintain great core control on the way down as the glutes tend to separate and relax. So pelvic floor is still braced, pulling in, and I'm going to squeeze my glutes in and up, right? As the muscle shape would denote, squeeze in and up all the way through. And again, strong glute contraction here, maintain good core control all the way down. So again, we have 4 primary exercises, right? We have the pelvic tilt to start with. Again, 2 sets, anywhere from 12 to 15 repetitions. I'm pulling in, really getting the body orientated so we understand, okay, the brain understands what a pelvic tilt is. We know to access that muscle rapidly. Because again, remember, we're doing this twice a day, every day for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Pelvic floor bracing and heel lifts, 10 to 12 repetitions on each side, 2 sets. And the same thing for the arm extension. Again, we're going back here, 2 sets, 10 to 12 repetitions of overhead extensions. Again, make sure that we're controlled here from pelvic floor is controlling the arm extension. And last but not least, at least a good 2 sets of 12 to 15 repetitions of our bridging exercises. And again, doing those 4 exercises twice a day, every day. And if you train at the gym or you're training at home, do them before you work out. Do them before you go for a run. And what it does is sets a ground zero neutral for your body. So now all your postural neutral muscles are active, and then you start building your sport and your activities on that. Okay, we've got a few more activities coming at you here pretty soon, so stay tuned.